Hey everybody, this is Mr. Meiosis again, here to bring you some more statistical joy in your life. So let's get to it. There's nothing to it but to get to it here. So we're going to look at two prop inference, so two proportion inference procedures, so confidence intervals and a two prop z-test using, of course, the one and only Geogebra. That's what we've been using in this course, so we're going to continue using it right now. So let's get to it. So I have this question here, and it's just like the other one that we talked about in my previous video with one prop inference, but we're looking at Among Us again. This time, the questions change a little bit. So suppose we take a random sample of 140 male and 140 female college students. So now I have two proportions. I'm looking at two samples. A sample of male and a sample of female students, and I'm checking to see if there's any significant difference, or I'm trying to estimate, in this case, the difference in the proportion of male and female CSU student game players that use Steam to play Among Us, and we're going to do that by creating and interpreting a 95% confidence interval. Now, a lot of students get confused here that things always have to be in male and female. Like, in the real world, we're not always dividing things into male and female, right? We might divide things into cat and dog if we're testing diet on animals, or, fish and reptiles. I don't know. The bottom line is we're talking about two groups. My example, female and male. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to, of course, Geogebra and figure this out. So we're going to go to, I like Geogebra Classic, probability, statistics, and we are doing a z estimate of a difference in proportions. All right. So we're going to go with a 95 confidence level this time. I believe I changed it to a 95% confidence interval. So we're going to go 95% confidence. Our first sample is going to be our male students in this case, which is going to be 21 successes out of 140 male students, and 35 out of 150 male students. Now, contrary to popular belief, you do not have to have the exact same sample sizes for you to compare proportions, because we're not comparing sample sizes. We're comparing proportions. So we're comparing the percentage of students that were male and the percentage of students that were female that use STEAM, not the number of students. So as long as the sample sizes are representative of the population, because we might have more students, male students, than female students, or more female students than male students. So we want to just make sure that the sample sizes are representative of the populations. They do not have to be equal, okay? So don't think that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut and paste this into our document so we can see what that looks like. Okay, just as we did before, we're going to use our lower limit and our upper limit, right? Now, notice that our lower limit is negative and our upper limit is positive. Well, that was because we are looking at a difference of two proportions. So we're comparing the male proportion, which is our sample 1, and the female proportion, which is our sample 2. So what we have here is we have a case where they alternate, that one is going to be bigger than the other. If they were both negative, then it would tell me that that the second sample was bigger than the first sample because we're subtracting. If they were both positive, then it would tell me that the first sample is bigger than the second one because, of course, we're subtracting that way. But in this case, they alternate. So we're going to write it in such a way that we understand that they alternate. So this is how we're going to write it. We're going to say we are 95% confident. That's how we always start these things off, right? We are 95% confident that the proportion of all CSU, of all male CSU Stan Among Us players that use Steam is between 17.32%. All right, now I just took that from here where it says lower limit. I didn't put a negative, right? You see that the negative's not on there. This is between that, but the negative is going to be in my next word, and the word is going to be lower, okay? Because it's lower than the females because it's negative. And looks like 0.006. So moving the decimal over, it's going to be 0.6%. That's pretty close to 0, right? And 0.6% higher than female than the proportion of all female CSU stan among us players that use Steam. All right? To access the game. So again, if it's a positive, you're going to use the word higher. If it's a negative, you're going to use the word lower. Okay? That's how we do a confidence interval. All right? Easy peasy. Now let's talk about how that relates to a hypothesis test. So right here I have my hypothesis test. Is there evidence that the proportion of male and female CSU Stan players that use Steam to play Among Us is significantly different? All right, so what I am going to do here is I'm going to create a hypothesis test. I've got someone at my door. I've got four things that I need to do. I need to do my hypothesis, my conditions, my mechanics, and my conclusion. My hypothesis in this case is that the proportion of males is equal to the proportion of females. For a 2 Prop Z test, all I'm looking to see is if there's any differences, all right? In this case, I'm just looking to see if it's significantly different. I didn't say if the proportion of males is greater than the proportion of females or vice versa. I would have put in a greater than or a less than symbol there. In this case, I just want to know if it's significantly different, so I'm going to use a not equal to. I've written out my parameters. I've written out my conditions. Now the difference here for conditions, you can see my previous video. We want to find the pooled proportion. So I've calculated the pooled proportion here. That's basically just putting all the females and the males into one group, and then finding the proportion that if I had them all in one group, what would that look like for the proportion of Steam players? And then I use that pooled proportion to calculate my third condition for success and failure. All that works there. You can pause it. You can go back to my previous video on 2 Prop Z tests to take a look at that. Vampires and werewolves, I think it was. Anyway, I'm going to use a 2 Prop Z test. So this time we're going to go and we're going to use Geogebra to do our mechanics. So instead of Z estimate, I'm going to go to Z test for a difference of proportions. Okay, and the lovely thing about Geogebra is it remembers what I did here, right? So it remembers I had 21 out of 140 and 35 out of 150. It gives me my samples 1 and 2. It gives me a standard error. It gives me my z-score and my p-value. So I'm going to take this information. I'm going to go and put it in my, my document so that I could easily use it in my mechanics section. Okay, so now I have my mechanics all pasted and nicely in here. My alpha level is going to be 0.05. Remember that we're doing a two-tailed test because it's a not equal to. And we originally had a confidence level of 95% in a confidence interval. So we take 95, subtract 100%, we get 5. And we do not divide by 2 because we have a two-tailed test. So we're going to leave it alone and have 5% as my alpha level. So now I look. My p-value is 0.07, which is in fact greater than my alpha level. Now we could have known that we were going to have that happen based on our confidence intervals, since they, our results are not significant because they alternate from negative to positive. All right, we can know that every time we see a confidence interval for 2 samples and they alternate from negative to positive. So since the p-value is greater than the alpha level, we will Did you speak to your computer right now and said fail to reject? I hope you did. Fail to reject the no. Okay, so what does this mean? Give us some room here so we can see. What does this mean in context? This means that there is no evidence or not enough evidence. There's no evidence to suggest that there is a significant difference in the proportion of male CSU STAN students that use Steam to play Among Us and female and the proportion of female students that use Steam to play Among Us. All right? That's what we're saying, that there is no evidence to suggest that there is a significant difference in the proportions. All right? That's what we're talking about. Had my p-value been small enough, I would say there is evidence to suggest there's a significant difference, right? Again, we are basing our conclusion, we're writing our conclusion based on the alternative hypothesis. You're not going to say that there's evidence that they're equal, okay? You're not going to say that there's evidence that there's no difference. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that there's not enough evidence to show that there is a difference, okay? So you got to make sure you write it in that way. Okay, folks, that was two-proportion inference, like a two-sample z-test, two-sample proportions using GeoGebra, of course. All right, don't forget to subscribe. Let me know what you think. See ya.